welcome back to chapter 21. Now, we have a few more chapters to go, but we are more than halfway into the story. And as I promised, I would not be doing any sort of analysis. Alright, so that is the job of your classroom teacher, your literature teacher, whoever that person is. However, if there are any questions that I could possibly answer, you could just drop them down in the comment section, or you can drop them in the comment section. Alright? Yes, leave your questions in the comment section. I will try my best to respond to them. Alright, so we are going to get into chapter 21 of the story. This chapter is not as short as the other chapters, so you have to be patient and just read along with me. Alright? It says, Louise tied the pig to a pole in the yard. My grandmother fed it a pile of old avocado peels before we ate. How much money do you still need to pay for the trip? I asked Louise. I made only 10 girds since the last time you saw me, she said. Bridget stretched out her hand to grab the fireflies buzzing around us. After the meal, we sat on the back porch and listened as Attie read from her notebook. She speaks in silent voices, my love, like the cardinal bird kissing its own image. Li parle nan voix moins, flapping wings, fallen change, broken bottles, whistling snakes, and boom, bang drums. She speaks in silent voices, my love. I drink her blood with milk, and when the pleasure peaks, my love leaves. Louise had helped her paraphrase the poem from a book of French poetry that Louise had read when she was still in school. You're a poet too, I said to Tantati. She pressed her notebook against her chest. After her reading, she and Louise strolled into the night like silhouettes on a picture postcard. My grandmother took the cassette player to her room to listen to the rest of my mother's message. I heard my mother's voice coming through the thin walls. I am not having the short breath anymore, but every so often I do find myself dreaming the bad dreams. I thought it would end, but lately it seems to be beginning all over again. Bridget was still awake even after my grandmother fell asleep. I wrapped her in a thick blanket, took her outside to show her the sky. Tantati was sitting on the steps feeding the pig. Is it male or female? I asked. What difference does it make to the pig? She asked. I want to give it a name. Call it Paul or Paulette, Jean or Jeanne. The pig will not protest. You do not have to name something to make it any more yours. Are you in a sour mood? My life, it is nothing, she said. What is the matter? Do you miss Croix de Rosettes? Croix de Rosettes was painful. Here, though, there is nothing at all. The sky seems empty even when I'm looking at the moon and stars. There were drums throbbing in the distance. Some staccato conch shells answered the call. I wish I had never left you, I said. You did not leave me. You were summoned away. We must graze where we are tied. I wish I had stayed with you. You must not go back and rearrange your life. It is no use for what has already happened. Sometimes there is nothing we can do. Do you want to go back to Croix de Rosette? I asked. I know old people. They have great knowledge. I have been taught never to contradict our elders. I am the oldest child. My place is here. I'm supposed to march at the head of the old woman's coffin. I'm supposed to lead her funeral procession. But even if lightning should strike me now, I will say this: I am tired. I woke up one morning and I was old myself. She threw a small green mango at the pig. They train you to find a husband, she said. They poke at your panties in the middle of the night to see if you are still whole. They listen when you pee to find out if you're peeing too loud. If you pee loud, it means you've got big spaces between your legs. They make you burn your fingers learning to cook. Then still, you have nothing. The pig jerked forward. The cord tightened around its neck, nearly causing it to choke. Tantati rushed over and loosened the rope. Take your baby inside, she said. I know you have heard them, the frightening stories of the night. The pig oinked all night. Tantati woke up several times to check on it. My grandmother got up to see what all the commotion was about. That Louise causes trouble. My grandmother turned her wrath to Tantati. Everything from her shadow to that pig is trouble. Don't trouble me tonight, old woman. Tantati strained to control her voice. The pig started a slow nasal whine. I will kill it, my grandmother said. I will kill it. My daughter woke up with a sharp cry. I fed her and rocked her back to sleep. The pig, it was still crying, but there was nothing I could do. Louise was out of breath when she ran up to the house the next morning. Her face was reddened with tears and her blouse soaked with sweat. My grandmother motioned for me to take the baby inside the house. I backed myself into the doorway while clinging tightly to my daughter. I watched from the threshold as Tantati gave Louise a cup of cold water from the jug beneath the porch. Liali. It's over, Louise said, panting as though she had both asthma and the hiccups at the same time. They killed Dessalines. Who killed Dessalines? Asked my grandmother. The Marcoutes killed Dessalines. Louise buried her head in Tantati's shoulder. Their faces were so close that their lips could meet if they both turned at the same time. Calm now, said Tantati as she massaged Louise's scalp. That's why I need to go, sobbed Louise. I need to leave. A poor man is dead, and all you can think about is your journey, snapped my grandmother. Next might be you or me with the Marcoutes, said Louise. We already had our turn, said my grandmother. Sophie, you keep the child behind the threshold. You are not to bring her out unless the restless spirit is in the ground. In the fairy tales, the Tauton Marcotte was a boogeyman, a scarecrow with human flesh. He wore denim overalls and carried a cutlass and a knapsack made of straw. In his knapsack, he always had scraps of naughty children, whom he dismembered to eat as snacks. If you don't respect your elders, then the Tartar Marcoux will take you away. Outside the fairy tales, they roam the streets in broad daylight, parading their Uzi machine guns. Who invented the Marcoutes? The devil didn't do it, and God didn't do it. Ordinary criminals walked naked in the night. They slicked their bodies with oil so they could slip through most fingers. But the Marcoutes, they did not hide. When they entered a house, they asked to be fed, demanded the woman of the house, and forced her into her own bedroom. Then all you heard was screams until it was her daughter's turn. If a mother refused, they would make her sleep with her son and brother, or even her own father. My father might have been a Marcotte. He was a stranger who, when my mother was 18 years old, grabbed her on her way back from school. He dragged her into the cane fields and pinned her down on the ground. He had a black bandana over his face, so she never saw anything but his hair, which was the color of eggplants. He kept pounding her until she was too stunned to make a sound. When he was done, he made her keep her face in the dirt, threatening to shoot her if she looked up. For months she was afraid that he would creep out of the night and kill her in her sleep. She was terrified that he would come and tear out the child growing inside her. At night, she tore her sheets and bit off pieces of her own flesh when she had nightmares. My grandmother sent her to a rich mulatto family in Croix de Rosette to do any work she could for free room and board as a restavek. Even though my mother was pregnant and half insane, the family took her in anyway because my grandmother had cooked and cleaned in their house for years before she married my grandfather. My mother came back to La Nouvelle de Marie after I was born. She tried to kill herself several times when I was a baby. The nightmares were just too real. Tantati took care of me. The rich mulatto family helped my mother apply for papers to get out of Haiti. It took 4 years before she got her visa, but by the time she began to recover her sanity, she left. Tantati took me to Croix de Rosette so I could go to school. And when I left, she moved back here to La Nouvelle de Marie to take care of my grandmother. Somehow, Dessalines' death brought to mind all those frightening memories. That night, I opened the window to listen to the night breeze rustling through the dry chacha bean pods in the distance. Tantati was talking to Louise. Her voice was muffled. Her breathing quickened as she sobbed loudly. It is the calm and silent waters that drown you. I never thought it would make me so sad to look in Sophie's face. The pig gave a sudden cry as Louise rushed away. Tantati slipped inside the house through a side door. Nothing should have taken you out into that black night. My grandmother was waiting inside. Did a bird nest in your hair? You seem to have lost your mind. Maybe a good death would save me from all this, Tantati said. I heard a thump, like a slap across the face. Tantati stormed out of the house and marched out to the porch. When I came out, Tantati was sitting with a lamp and her notebook on her lap. I folded the flaps of Joseph's shirt between my legs and sat on the top step next to her. Do you ever visit Mr. Augustine? I asked. No, she said. Sometimes people just disappear from our lives, and it is not a bad thing. We sat silently and looked at the stars for a while. I'm going to excuse myself and to go back inside, I said. I do not want to leave the baby alone for long. The old woman, she is going to send word to your mother that you are here. My mother does not concern herself with where I am. You are judging her much too harshly. When Joseph and I first married, I used to write her every month. I've sent her pictures of Bridget. She keeps the letters but makes no reply. She will come, said Tantati. Come where? She will come here. She has promised for a long time to come and arrange the old woman's funeral, and the old woman will place on the cassette words begging her to come so you can settle this quarrel. Bridget got up early the next morning, ready to bounce and play. I lay her on the bed and tried to make her do some baby exercises. In the next room, my grandmother was recording her reply cassette to my mother. Martine, qui Jean Woodway? How are you? We are doing fine here, following in the shadow of Father Time. I am well, except for the old bones that ache sometime. Dessalines has died. Marcoots killed him. Do you remember him? He was the call man. I don't even need to talk about Atty. She's carrying on like she has got a pound of rocks on her chest. Sadness is now her way of life. You needn't worry about Sophie. Could be she is on a little holiday. The bird, it always returns to the nest. My grandmother stopped to clear her throat. Bridget grabbed my fingers and held them tightly as she rolled on her side. Is Auntie in her room? Yelled my grandmother. She is out, I shouted back. Bridget shrieked, trying to scream along. Is there something you want to say to your mother? No. The recorder clicked to a stop. Any more you want to say? Asked my grandmother. I think we've already said enough. In the distance, the bell tolled announcing Dessalines' funeral. Tantati stumbled into her room, her body rocking from side to side. She lowered herself to the ground, her large feet barely sidestepping my outstretched leg and Bridget's toes. Tantati's eyes were red. She blinked quickly, trying to keep them open. She snapped her fingers and made faces at Bridget to get her attention. Are you all right? I asked her. Fine, good. Her breath smelled like rum. She stretched her body out on the floor and within a few seconds fell asleep. She woke up at noon with a panic-stricken look in her eyes. My notebook, she asked. You seen it? I shook my head no. Bridget was asleep on the bed. I was afraid that Tantati's sudden movements would wake her up. Maybe the book is in my room, she mumbled, heading for the door. Were you drinking? I asked. I drink a little to forget my troubles, she said. It's no more a vice than the old woman and her tobacco. She walked out into the yard, splashed some water over her face, then started towards the road. She came back in the very early morning hours. The voices in the yard kept me awake. You can go now, said Tantati. Let me see you enter, insisted Louise. That calf of yours. Go and rest that calf of yours. People do not die from aching calves, said Tantati. You think I'm an old lady? I do not need a walking cane. Be pleasant, Atty. Go inside. I heard Tantati walk inside. The bed squealed under her body as she crashed on it. Louise walked home alone in the fading dusk. Hi everyone, thank you for joining me for chapter 21. If you have not already done so, please like, share, and subscribe. If there are any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment sections. While you're at it, give me a thumbs up. All right? See you soon. Bye.